Okay, so Skyblock has been around for a long time at this point, over 5 years. And over those 5 years, a lot of things have changed and a lot of things have stayed the same. New things have been implemented and older things have been lost. So many different things have been said about everything that it's hard to know what's actually true and what's not. So I've rounded up some Skyblock misconceptions and we're gonna see. We're gonna put them to the test. Or just straight up say they are misconceptions, because some of them just are. And the first one absolutely, completely and utterly blew my mind when I realised this. I'm going to ask you a few questions before we get to it. So you know when you're killing mobs, what happens? Well, obviously, maybe you're going to get some coins, you get some drops. But of course, the more of that same mob you kill, you actually do gain some Skyblock XP. Through Bestiary, right? No, you don't gain any XP through Bestiary at all. You might gain XP through Bestiary, as if this is Bestiary, not Bestiary. It doesn't say Bestiary, it says Bestiary, literally B-E-S-T. Best. Not Beast, not B-E-A-S-T. I never noticed this. Never noticed this until it was pointed out a few days ago, and it absolutely, completely broke me. I'm still going to continue to call it Bestiary, because everybody does it, and it sounds and feels really weird saying Bestiary. I always thought it makes sense because we're killing beasts, you know, we're killing mobs. But I guess what it actually means is you're trying to best. Basically kill, you know, as many as you possibly can. Bestiary just sounds way more right. Maybe I'm just clapped and I should have realised previously, but I never realised it actually wasn't Bestiary. Let me know if this is something that you noticed before, or maybe you've just noticed now that I've told you. Now, before we go any further, at the moment we're actually trying to beat the population of Andorra with subscribers. The population of Andorra is around about 80,000 people, and once you reach 80,000 subscribers, we'll actually be visiting Andorra and we'll be able to claim that we have more subscribers than the population of the whole country, which would be pretty cool, so make sure to subscribe to make that happen. Also, if you are planning on purchasing anything from the Hypixel store, make sure to use code NITROS, it gets yourself 5% off. You should join the Discord server, it's linked in the description of this video. We offer slayers and dungeon carries, so if you need carries or want to carry and make some coins, make sure to join. Okay, the next one emanates from dungeons. No matter what anybody says, dying is part and parcel of dungeons, you know? It just is. And while you can take measures to try and mitigate this, for instance like a spirit mask, sometimes it just happens, you know? And when you're dead, you don't really have much to do other than reflect on your terrible skill. Well, at least that's what I do. Now, another thing you can do is to get back into the game quicker, you can kill a fairy to then revive yourself. But people are reluctant to kill these fairies because they believe that it actually reduces your score, which is just not true. So I'm going to show that now. Now, it's important to know that obviously you can kill the fairies when you're not dead as well. I have realised that I'm in a dungeon on my own and it's kind of impossible to die and then revive yourself. Okay, so on the right of the screen, our score is 141 and we're going to go ahead and kill a fairy. Okay. Our score is still 141. So it's not killing fairies what reduces your score, it's the person actually dying that reduces the score. Killing the fairy then to revive them or revive yourself doesn't impact the score at all. But yeah, I guess it kind of makes sense why people get that mixed up. But it is a misconception and it isn't true. On to the next. When people are trying to choose which weapon they should use, they often test the weapon and see which weapon deals the most damage, which is sure a good indicator as to which weapon would be better to use. But what really matters more than one-hit damage is going to be your DPS. Well, at least in majority of situations. You know, there's some unique situations where you need really high one-hit damage, whereby you can kind of maybe ignore your attack speed to some extent, or your DPS. But for the most part, it's the DPS that counts, and that is mainly down to the attack speed. Maybe the attack speed that the weapon gives you, or the attack speed that you can achieve with that particular weapon. For example, if you have a weapon that has pretty high one-hit damage, however with that weapon you can only really achieve relatively low damage per second, i.e. not really that many hits per second, you actually might be worse off with that high damaging weapon as opposed to a lower damaging weapon that actually can deal more damage in that same period of time through more and different hits. Also, there's certain weapons, for instance the Terminator, that might seem pretty underwhelming if you don't double check that you've got your attack speed up. DPS is critical. While one-hit damage is also good to look at, you need to really look at the DPS of weapons. And the misconception really is that one-hit damage is all you really need to look at, and that DPS is something that's kind of forgotten. So the next one takes us to the Crystal Hollows, and indeed over to the Lost Precursor City. Now, in order to do Nucleus runs, you need to collect all the crystals. And for one of those crystals, you need to give certain items or one collective item to this guy right here. Inside there is the crystal that you need to collect, and in order to open the door, you need to talk to this guy and give him some stuff. He'll ask you to give you one of each of these parts. Now you get these parts from basically killing the iron golems that spawn. Yeah, these guys, the automatons. Now these automatons drop different parts. They drop obviously the parts that we've just looked at, and all of these parts have a 1% drop chance. They're all 1 in 100. All of them. Nowadays you can bypass all of this basically messing around by just buying the precursor apparatus and giving him this item instead of the individual 6. However, what I don't fully understand is, with these items being out for so long since the start of the Crystal Hollows, how the prices for each of these 1 in 100s differ so much. For instance, you've got a synthetic heart up at 270k, a control switch at 220, a super light motor at 50k, a Robotron reflector at 182, FTX at 220, and then you've got the Electron transmitter at 185. Now we've seen on the wiki that all of these have the same drop chances. However, it seems like it's a pretty common misconception that they actually don't have the same drop chances. But this is completely justified by looking at how rare some of these are in comparison to others. None of these items have any other use other than giving them as a 6 to the guy who guards the crystal. So they're all in the exact same amount of demand, yet the prices go from 50k all the way up to almost 300. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and I think the misconception is completely valid, but according to the wiki, it is a misconception that they have different drop chances. It's a really strange one. It's made even more strange that of course it's a 1 in 100 for any of those from the exact same mob. So yeah, it's a really confusing one. Anyway, moving on. Did you know that Slayers actually make you lose money? They don't. That is the misconception. You see, nowadays, majority of Slayers simply don't make as much money as they used to, considering, well, so many people have got around to doing them consistently, meaning that the prices of items have dropped, considering the demand for those items is relatively similar, yet the supply is massively higher. And with the majority of Slayers now being relatively easy to do, it means that a lot more players are able to actually do them. For instance, we'll take something like revs. People will neglect doing revs nowadays because they simply don't think it'll make money. Now, on face value, that may seem relatively logical, considering the best drop you can drop from a rev is a Warden Heart, and that nowadays is only 125ml. Now, it was down to 90ml, but back in the day it was almost 300. And 300ml back then could buy you a lot more than it can nowadays. So, you know what, it's kind of valid people thinking that it doesn't make money, but it's just not true. You see, with Slayers, there's so many other ways you can make money. It's not just the best drop, it's of course all the other drops, it's the speed of doing the bosses and so on. The servers are so bad today, it's unreal. But I think a lot of people forget that Slayers give an absurd amount of combat XP, meaning that you can level combat pets really, really quickly. Now, pet leveling is really good money anyway, but obviously Slayers is kind of where you want to be if you're leveling pets. It just makes it so much better and so much more profitable. Now, pet leveling has been around for ages, for as long as Skyblock's been around, and it's no secret that everybody knows that leveling G-Drags makes money, and it actually makes way less money than it used to, considering so many people do it now. But leveling a G-Drag alone makes 400 million coins. Now, the profit tracker that you see in the top left of my screen is tracking the profit of one metered Warden Heart. So even metering one Warden Heart, I got 124ml back for a Warden Heart, 55ml in Scythe Blades, 43ml in Shards of the Shredded, 23ml in Viscera, 22ml in Smite 7, 16ml in Foul Flesh. Minus the 117ml cost of spawning the boss, I've still made 184 million coins profit. That's before leveling a pet. So people saying that Slayers don't make money just isn't right. It's not true. Even if you take something like Sven, where you probably make slightly less profit, or Tarantula, maybe where you make a similar amount from more smaller drops, these still give a ridiculous amount of combat XP. Maybe not as much as like Blaze, or because Revs is so quick to do, maybe Revs. But yeah, Slayers not making money and actually losing money is a crazy misconception. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's video. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.